Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so for everybody, the session is getting recorded now. Okay, so as I explained earlier, because we started recording again, this is the building blocks are like cloud-based HPC architecture, the file system hierarchy, the environment modules, how the modules can be used effectively to submit your specific problems, little bit about Slum scheduler. The auto scale functionality is very important for the cloud-based HPC because, as I discussed, cloud-based HPC is all about the billing is based on the amount of resources that you use. So it should always be cloud should always be elastic. Elastic means it should scale up and scale down based on your needs, and so you should only pay for what you are using. And that's why this auto scale functionality is there. So the example is, suppose today you want 100 CPU cores and tomorrow you want 400 CPU cores, and then day after tomorrow I did you don't need any of the CPU cores, then you should get that resources on the need basis or on the demand basis, and also the amount of resources that you are going to use, you should pay only for that. I mean the your institute or the organization should pay only according to that. In the workshop, we will cover all these building blocks along with the actual use cases. We'll try to cover your use cases here and see whether we want to make sure that you get pretty much familiar with the cloud HPC and you will feel like more working on this system. So because you already used HPC, I can skip the slide, but I let me go in briefly here. So when you are using your cloud-based HPC in your premises or somewhere, your data center team or your IT team is maintaining some rack like this, and you can see that you can have the limited racks, right? Eventually, you can have a amount of capacity in this rack is limited by the real estate of this rack as well as the computation capacity, I mean the number of servers that you put it here and all. And based using this kind of system, you build a HPC system. But as you know that your problems are not constant, while your infrastructure can be a constant like this, and that's where the cloud comes into picture, where you don't depend on the real estate or the resources that the institute owns at that moment. I mean, they can invest, but it will not be a runtime investment. It will be a stepwise investment, actually. Yeah. To get a runtime on demand thing, we generally use the cloud-based HPC, where multiple HPC machines come together, and here everything is based on the virtual machine. So cloud is built on the virtualization. So that's why you will hear this term multiple times going future, the VM, the virtual machine. So instead of, you might have used your term like node in the HPC cluster, or you might have used the term servers or the machines. Here in the cloud, many of the clouds use the term virtual machine. So this VM is nothing but the virtual machine, which is similar to your servers in the HPC cluster or nodes in the HPC cluster. So multiple virtual machines come together to solve your application or your problem. And of course the storage is important, so you will be keeping your input data and then you are generating the output data. So same HPC concept we want to use in the cloud. The only differentiator will be there will be a virtual machine concept instead of the physical hardware will be there. So there are two main types of HPC, or I mean the cluster based system that we deployed. So your problems can be embarrassingly parallel, or we call it as a HTC problem, high throughput problem, or your problem can be the HPC problem or the tightly coupled problem. Now, every problem, how
Uh,
can we, hello?
Hello.
Hmm?
Yeah, excuse me. Can you make it full screen? Actually,
Is it visible now? Full screen?
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
So as I said, there are two different types of problems. One is embarrassingly parallel, and the other one is the tightly coupled problem. So what is embarrassingly parallel? So don't nodes or the servers don't talk to each other, or there is a very little cross node communication. So what does that mean is that you have a problem, you could split that problem very effectively across multiple nodes or multiple machines, or even you can say multiple processors. And every processor is running their own sub problem or subset of the problem without actually need to have a communication with another processor or another node. So, so there is very little communication. So consider a case where there is an organization and everybody has given a job. Every person has been given a job, and you split that job such a way that the two persons does not need to talk with each other at all. And I mean sometimes it's embarrassing because people are coming, they doing their job, and then they are not talking with each other at all. So that is embarrassingly parallel job. And there are, I mean, many times you will have such kind of jobs. And there are special architecture require, not special, there are minimal requirements as compared to the tightly coupled application. So minimal requirements means what? uh, Suppose in embarrassingly parallel, the nodes or servers are not talking with each other. So it does not matter whether the network between these two nodes is significantly, I mean, it provides a superior performance or not, because anyway they are not talking with each other. The second requirements for the embarrassingly parallel job is that if we can split the storage also. So for example, every server gets its own storage, and at the start of the job itself you split your input data into the different segments, and you send those segments to individual storages which can be directly assigned attached to the server. In that case, each server will connect to its own storage, take the input data, and generate the output data. So effectively, you ran a very big problem, but every server took its own data. You split that problem into multiple tasks, and then every server executed those tasks independently, and then you generated the output. At the later stage, you can combine that output some using some process or that. So that can be considered as a post analysis or post computation thing. So the examples are like parameter sweep. I mean, where you can have like multiple you have a similar problems, but you want to do it on multiple input parameters. So each parameter is given to a single node, for example, or job splitting based on the search or the comparison through data. So the data driven problems can be split like this. And there might be a restriction because the application sometimes does not support MPI. MPI is you might have used the message passing interface. So these kind of problems does not have need to actually provide the MPI. So the architecture they build without MPI. Yeah, so but there can be another problem because of that. They never supported MPIs, and then people cannot actually use it in the MPI fashion or the tightly coupled fashion. So there are examples like the embarrassingly parallel problem we still want to build through the MPI. So that cannot be done if the MPI support is not available. With the tightly coupled problem, the nodes needs to communicate with each other. So there should be a very high performing interconnect between them. Interconnect is similar to the networking infrastructure. So there should be a good interconnect between the server nodes, and there should be a message passing infrastructure available between the nodes. So you should have your application should support the MPI kind of uh, protocol. And the interconnect or the network should be low latency as well as high throughput. So you might have heard the term like InfiniBand. So such kind of interconnect is required in the tightly coupled partition. So in our cloud HPC also we have created two partitions. One is the HTC partition and another is the HPC partition. So you can decide no, so this is one reason that you can decide which one to go. Along with there are some other characteristics of the individual nodes. Based on that, you can decide which partition I should select. So when you are submitting a problem, you should be providing the partition or the which type of partition my problem should go, whether it should be HTC partition or the HPC partition. So key software components that are deployed in the current architecture, which is in generally available with all the HPC architecture, is this is a client. Client means our the users or the user machines. Like you might be using the SSH as a protocol, or I mean we are supporting SSH client here, and I will introduce new client today, and that's specifically for the graphic user interface. So that is a client. Basically you connected to the scheduler through some way. So SSH is one of the way, and there should be a user management. So everybody of you will get an account, for example, the username, and then based on that account you should be able to submit your jobs through a scheduler. So there are many options. Here we deployed Slum as the scheduler, and as I said, you can decide the partition whether I want to submit job to HTC partition or the HPC partition, and based on that the job will run. And of course on the HPC partition you will need some kind of MPI mechanism. So we have OpenMPI deployed, and even Intel MPI runtime is available there. So but most of your binaries are built with the GCC with OpenMPI, not with the Intel compiler. So we recommend you to use OpenMPI.
Tanmay, I think Ambrish has a question.
Okay. So let me check. Yeah, Amrish, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask that if let's say a job is supposed to is supposed for HPC, let's say, and we submit it on HTC, let's say, then we can see that there is a clear loss that we are suffering, because as you mentioned that in HTC the nodes don't talk to each other, and that would slow our computing. But I can't see a clear answer for the vice versa situation, that if a job is meant for HTC, and if we submit it on the high performance computer, then what would be the cost?
Cost will be the resource cost. See, for example, HPC infrastructure is more costlier than the HTC infrastructure, right? So if you don't need a HPC kind of infrastructure where interconnects are very fast and all, and it increases the cost of the infrastructure. So so that is the reason, like if you feel like my job is not really of this requirement, then it is better to submit it on the HTC partition, because the cost associated with the HPC is higher, because the infrastructure will be the higher.
Okay, so in terms of money, we will lose some, but
Yeah.
in terms of computing time, are we also losing something
No,
some
in
of the-
fact, it will be better as compared to the, see, whatever HPC things that you want to, sorry, HTC options that you have, like this splitting of the storages and all, that can be built on the HPC partition also. Right, so you definitely your HTC problems will run on the HPC partition. It is more of the cost associated with that will have a effect. So it's better to select a proper partition, because cost is also important factor.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so in the cloud HPC is almost same, where you are sitting at your location, whether in the TIFR or due to this pandemic you might be sitting at home. So you will get some master connection. I mean, there is a gateway which is more like a administrative architecture or point of view. There is a gateway also, but for you, you will be connecting to the master node, okay, through SSH, the way you might be connecting through to your TIFR machines right now. So you will be connecting to the master node. So from master node, it will be an SSH connection, and through SSH connection, you can basically run your problems in the cloud. In the cloud, everything required for your current applications has been already deployed, and I will show you how to use that. Especially some of the, while you work mostly on the open source applications, but whenever there is some commercial applications, then the licenses are required to run those commercial applications. So that licenses can also be connected from your premises to the cloud, or you can host those commercial licenses in the cloud. So from user perspective, your main motivation will be like to submit your jobs and monitor your jobs. From the admin perspective, the important thing will be the managing these HPC resources very effectively. And also, I mean, there can be see, this is like one in example of the cloud HPC that you are currently going to experience, but in future you will see that this is the trend, and then there are multiple cloud vendors who will come into picture, and then you will be able to actually manage multiple public cloud providers, like say Microsoft, Amazon, Oracle, Google, IBM. All those guys will be competing for this space actually, that you will be going to use, and then eventually you might, as I said, like right now you are deciding whether I want to submit job on say HPC partition or the HTC partition. In future you might have one more selection criteria, whether I want to submit job onto a particular cloud, which cloud I should submit. Again, there will be multiple reasons. Of course, cost will be the one reason, but cost, performance are the important reasons, but there will be many other reasons as well. So yeah, so this is the typical cloud architect topology. Now I think we should directly jump onto one of the session that I am going to connect to. So it is like this. I am going to connect to the say master node or the scheduler node through SSH, and then you guys mostly use Linux or you guys use Windows? How is the usage pattern like?
We all use Linux mostly.
You all use Linux. Okay. So what is going to happen is that every user needs to create their SSH key. Okay, I mean RSA key, which there will be a command. If you already have your own key. Are you using SSH keys or you generally don't use SSH keys? Have you used SSH keys?
Well, I have used SSH keys.
Mhm.
I don't know what are they.
Okay, so whoever has their own SSH keys, they can share their public SSH key, of course public only, to our team, and then we can enable your cloud access based on like the requirements, and then users can basically connect to the cloud-based master server using SSH. So it will always be SSH key or RSA key based authentication, and you will not be having username password based authentication. So for this master node or the scheduler node, you will be connecting through the SSH using a public private key RSA algorithm. And once you connect here, it will be like a Linux machine that you are connected to. So for example, right now I'm giving you presentation from Windows, so I can basically connect. So here, if you can see that I have already in the authentication file, I have already added one private key. I mean, my private key is added here so that I can connect to this master server which is in the cloud. So I have already configured it. Same thing you will be needed to configure at your side. Okay, so I will just a second. I need IP address. So you will be provided with a master node's IP address. So for example, currently this is the IP address 13.65.93 for 247. So this will be static most of the time unless there is some activity where you want to install some new things from say our or you want to upgrade your system, or you want to add some new modules, then we may need to spin up the HPC cluster again, and at that time this public IP address will change, and we will communicate that new public IP address with you. So what you will need actually is only this public IP address. The username will be that will be provided by us. Even this public IP address will be provided by us, and the users needs to submit the public key of the RSA. SSH public key, SSH RSA public key with us so that we can configure it, and then you can connect to the system. So right now I am connecting to this system, and if you see, I can just enter the HPC admin, and with this RSA key, I was not asked password, so which is you will be using. Okay, so I'll increase my font size. Is it visible? The Linux terminal.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it's
Okay, so this is the machine that you have connected, which is nothing but the master server in the cloud, right? So this is the master server in the cloud, and now on this server you should be able to do your job submission command, and you can select whether the HTC partition to be used or the HPC partition to be used, and then the problem will run on that. Okay, so now if you go here, because I logged in into HPC admin, first thing is I will run one command df-h, which will show me what are the file system available on here and how much storage is available on this system. So there are many things, many partitions available, but the important fact is right now that for you is this storage, which is MNT exports /MNT /exports data. So all of your data, all of your user data will be in this directory, MNT exports data. So currently it is of 500 GB, and out of which 475 GB is available. And you might question like why so low or so high, whatever might be your question, but because it's a cloud, you can increase it, and as I said, we can also increase and decrease it whenever the requirement changes. So because we want, it's a start of the use, start of the I mean, this is a starting period of our HPC usage, cloud HPC usage. The storage is considered as a low, like 500 GB. It can keep on increasing or increasing if a real need increases, and it can keep on increasing. So of course, this is not as elastic as I discussed earlier, the way I discussed like submission of job. Here there will be some manual intervention. So suppose the available storage gets reduced to say 50 GB or something, then or I mean whatever is your uncomfortable size of the storage, then you should be notifying to us, then we can increase the storage to the next level. So that can be worked out. So this is one storage. The other storage is MNT resource, and I had a multiple discussion with Dr. Saurav also. So this is a storage which we see a small size here like 99 GB, but uh, this is also very important, and I will explain you about that storage in a bit in some time. But any questions on this MNT exports data? Like this is the storage, and you will be working most of the time on this side.
So when you say we'll be working on this drive, you mean to say then whatever our code is going to give the output, that should be stored in this file.
Exactly.
In this drive.
Right. Right. So MNT. I mean, I think I should rephrase that, or I should correct myself. So your persistent data that you want to store should be here. Okay. Because I want to also introduce another storage to you. So this is the data. This is the storage where you can definitely keep your input data at the start, and you can keep your persistent data here. So every user will have their own account directory, associated directory with in this MNT export data. So every user will have their own directory, and they will only have access to that directory. So for example, if I want to go in the Saurav, I think because I am a HPC admin, I can be able to go, but otherwise, no user should be able to go inside any other user's directory. So that will be the configuration will be done. And yes, so you should keep your most of the data in here, and so your
Just
input
to
data should be here, and your output generated final data that you may want to download, it can be here. Yes, Dr. Saurav.
So at this point, for everyone's benefit, let me just explain what he means by persistent data. So he hasn't come to that part yet, but there will be some storage where you can put data for while running the job. And there may be usage cases where putting your output during the runtime may actually be beneficial than sending it to MNT exports data. However, as soon as that run finishes and the virtual machine is automatically killed, So this is an auto scale concept that he will come to later. That storage will vanish and you cannot get that back again. So this is the place where you need to keep your data that you want to keep.
Right.
So in strictly speaking, Ambarish's question about our run output data, whether to put it in there or not, the question is yes and no. No in the sense that you should most likely, almost all cases, you should, during runtime, you should use the storage that is associated with the VM itself. That gives you the lowest latency and it will not slow things down. But then once the job finishes and because of auto scale, the cloud will turn off your VM. Before that happens, you need to get that data and transfer it to MNT exports that data. Otherwise, you will lose that data.
Right. Exactly. So, so that's the point basically. So if you see here in this case, HTC partition, every node will have their associated storage, right? And that storage will be, I mean, in the cloud, there the storage is anyway available there. If you get the computation power, you generally get the storage, and then you should utilize that storage actually. And because see, every node will have about say 1 TB around storage available, other than this storage. So suppose you have say runtime data, you are running your computation, you generate a huge amount of data, you can keep it here in every server's associated storage. But as I said, it's a temporary storage. You should you generate as much data as possible, and then if you can, either you copy that whole output after that to the MNT exports data through your script, or you should extract some important data out of that. So suppose you generate say 500 GB of data due to the computation, and you feel like, okay, I can do the analysis on that data there itself on this server. So you do it, and eventually you just extract the important data, which can be say 1 GB or less than that. So you just copy that data here, and then you can let that other remaining data go if you feel comfortable with that. So that can be done. So you have to use that intelligently.
This is about the last comment that you mentioned. So is there a way to manually keep the machine from killing itself after the job is complete?
Yeah, you cannot do that. Either you should see for whole system, then we need to stop the auto scale, or if there is no facility as of now. That's good question, but right now there is no facility. So the workaround can be is basically you don't stop your job. You just keep running some sleep command for say at the end of your job. Suppose you feel like, okay, for next 1 hour I am going to do something on that server. Then at the end of your job, you just give the sleep command on that same script for say 1 hour. Then the job will continue for 1 hour on that machine, and then you can do your work there, and then you can come back basically. And then suppose you complete your work before that 1 hour sleep. So suppose you complete it in 10 minutes, then you just kill your job, and then automatically again the machine can stop.
Okay.
So you have
So
to do
answer the same question from the cost perspective, you want the VMs to be killed as soon as you are not running anything on there, because you are getting charged for the time that VM is on.
Exactly. So if you really want to do, instead of doing manual work on these machines, if you can script it in your job, I mean, sleep is the worst kind of workaround that you can build, but there is that option. But as Dr. Saurav said, that you can build some intelligence inside your script only instead of manually. See, eventually with manually we are going to run some commands. If you can add those commands in your script itself and it will be part of your job, then everything can be done as a part of job and then you can extract the data from here. But if the manual intervention is required, then the workaround can be the sleep, or yeah, sleep can be the workaround, but make sure that once you are done with that, you kill that job, then automatically that machine will get killed. Otherwise, again, the as long as the sleep command is running, it will keep on running, right? So keep that. I mean, see in when you are doing it in your premises, you don't worry because either your jobs are getting in queued, so you are okay because you are anyway waiting, and the in other case when your job is running, because it's a static resource that already the investment has already been done by the institute, so you are okay, right? But in cloud, both things actually can be solved. One is that your job may not be in the queue because it can keep on scaling, right? There is virtually you can go to the as many resources as possible. So I mean, of course there will be some reservation limits, but there is less chance of less probability of your job going into the queue. And the second thing is, because your job is all the cloud resources are precious in the sense that you are paying on the time basis, so you should make sure that once you are done, your activity is done, you scale it down. I mean, the scale down should work. Okay, so now the question, because
Excuse me.
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. Like, then my storage is like a two-step process. Like, first I store it in the virtual machine that is automatically storing, and then I need to copy the data in the MN export,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, that's
And
a
this,
recommended method, yes.
I mean, this is not necessary, but I feel that that will be the best use of the given resources. But we can experiment a little bit on this.
Yes.
The main thing to remember is MNT exports data is something that will stay after your jobs are finished and virtual machines are killed. But
Yes,
anything that's on your virtual machine, that will just vanish.
yes. My question is like, let's say the job finishes at the virtual machine, but I have due to the latency part, I have not yet copied it in the export data. Then what will happen? Like for the last job,
Yeah.
I'm running.
No, your job itself. So okay, let me give you a specific example. You are running Mesa.
Mhm.
You are submitting a script where the command is your Mesa command, okay?
Mhm.
And then at the end there is an exit command, right?
Yes, yes.
So before the exit command, you need to do this copy command.
Okay.
Then your Mesa job finishes, but the scheduled job has not finished yet because it needs to do the copying before it is finished. So then it does the copying and then it finishes.
Right. Right. So you can create as big script as possible and you can mention that script itself as a job. So it's not like one command is job, right? You can build the whole script and which can have multiple commands. So as long as unless all the commands execute, the job does not get finished and the machine will not stop.
Okay.
And the thing is that if you this works good, and that temporary storage is nothing but this MNT resource /MNT/resource. So every machine that you will connect, your job will run, will have its own /mnt/resource directory. So you can write a script such that you can use that local /mnt/resource if you want to. And now, while this is a very small machine because it's a master node, its only job is to do the scheduling. So you can see this is having 99 GB of the data storage, which is this MNT resource. So similarly, every machine will have this directory MNT resource, as well as every machine will also have this directory MNT exports data. So on every machine that your job runs, or the virtual machine your job runs, you will see both the directories. Whereas this is global, this is a NFS storage. So as I said, it's a persistent storage. So you will see same data in every machine inside this. In every machine or the VM, you will see MNT exports data. But on every machine, if you go into /MNT resource, you might find different data because it's their own resource. So you can relate MNT resource with this kind of storage, like associated with the via virtual machine, whereas the MNT export data is this storage, which is common across all the machines. Right? And yes, so I think this is the one I wanted to discuss.
On this, I have a quick question. So the master node MNT resource has all the modules, I think, right?
No. Okay. So MNT resource is generally, if you go in the MNT resource, you can see here there is a text file, data loss warning readme. So generally we recommend not to put anything here. Okay, it's only temporary data that you should put.
Okay.
Okay. So no, you see, even this machine, suppose I just stop this machine and again start this machine, still I will lose that data. So so that's why we don't keep it here.
Okay.
This
So
MNT resource.
where is the module then?
Yeah, so I'll come to that part actually. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hello.
there was some question. Yes.
Yeah. So this MNT resource is the temporary storage that is associated with every virtual machine, right?
Exactly. Right. Right. So suppose you write a script where you say, or your job, you can say that, okay, use the /MNT/resource, then it will be something like this happening. This kind of thing will be happening, basically. Okay.
Yes.
So I think next thing is if you again I will run df minus h. The slash size is not very big, so 30 GB is the data, and out of that already 16 GB is used and available is 14 GB. So you should not use the slash to store anything. So while your home directories will be there, so if you see, your home directories are also mounted on MS. Yeah, so this MNT export shared is another actually home directory, but it is part of the slash. So what we recommend you to not use the home directory, but use MNT exports data, and there everybody will have their own directory and access, right? So please make sure that there is a difference between. So if I do cd slash and then tilde, I will go to the home directory where which is this home directory, but I should not put lot of data here. Mainly I should work on MNT exports data, and there I will have the HPC admin. So what will be the use of the home directory? To set your environments. For example, if I again go back to your my home directory, and I can put my bash profiles and all those things. If you want to set it up, then we can set it up there basically here inside that. Okay, so just use the home and also that you can do using tilde slash dot bash rc, so that you don't ever go to this place, and you should always use mnt exports data. So that is the thing. So root file system is very limited in size. Currently, there is no 2 TB. Right now, 500 GB of the data storage is associated, but which can be increased. Every user will have a directory with the username. So /mnt export /data and username will be there. Data storage size can be increased. So MNT export data size can be increased. All machines on the cluster can access the data storage, which I explained already. So /MNT /export /data can be seen by every machine, every virtual machine in the cloud. And the temporary storage, which we discussed right now, which is MNT resource. Okay, so once you understand this file system hierarchy, then we can go to the next part, which is environment modules. Okay, so now the question that Dr. Saurav had, what we did is there is a directory called /opt. /opt directory has all the installations, important installations that are required to run the HPC job or the scientific jobs, which we thought like will be important to you based on the inputs from Dr. Saurav. Now suppose we want to, so you can see here there is a Anaconda there is a CFITS-IO there, then there is a CMC test is there, rebound is there, Mesa SDK is there. So these are the important directories which are already there. GSL is there, for example, GCC is there, then OpenMPI is there. So as I said, the Intel MPI is also there, and all those things are there. So while you don't need to go to the /opt directory, because we have modularized all the applications which are required, but to make sure that you understand, or if you find some bugs and all, you can look into the /opt directory whether the associated files or directories are available. For example, CFITS-IO is available, GSL is available, and all. So everything is here. Okay, even see, CMC test is like a user entity. It's not the libraries as such, but still we kept it here so that it's a compiled code that we have kept here. So you can copy that code to your directory and you can run those codes. So this is the directory there. But so how to use those libraries and modules? So we have created the modules. Module. So if you run module available command, then you can find all the modules that we have kept in the /opt directory. So important for you right now, it might be some of them, not all of them. So for example, GCC will be required, MPI, OpenMPI will be required, astrophysics related modules are kept here. CFITS-IO, GSL is if it is required, then they are kept here. Okay, now Mesa SDK is here, but Mesa SDK has their own way of, it's not module, it's a whole SDK is there, but you can set any of the path in your command line and then it will be available, and on each machine you will have this thing available. So you don't need to worry whether it will be available on other machine or not. So same binaries are available on each machine, and we build it based on the one cloud concept called images. So once you build, you create a machine, say virtual machine. So I created this virtual machine with all this input application. Then I can create one image out of that. Image is something like your ISO file or the disk, right? See, the disk that you use to install any operating system. So similarly, we can build the image out of that, and we can create hundreds of virtual machines from that same image. So you will get exact same environment that was created for this. So that's why whenever new virtual machine gets created or killed, you will see the same binaries or same applications in that directory also, in the slash opt directory. Okay, so have you used modules? I think you might be using modules in your PBS HPC infrastructure. So same thing, you have to basically load the modules. So for example, module avail is this, and if I run the GCC command, sorry, GCC. So for let's not do GCC, might be at the default location also. Suppose MPI run. So if I run MPI run command, it is saying that MPI run command is not found, because, and while there is a open MPI here, whereas also Intel MPI is also there, and still it is showing that command not found. The reason being that the module is not loaded yet. So module list will show you whether module is loaded. So it is saying that no module files are loaded here currently. So suppose I want to run MPI job using command line, then what I should do is I should run module load and MPI and say open MPI. This one. So a module load, and then I will select this module, and once I select this module, I can see that in module list I can see that MPI open MPI is there. Now by default we have added GCC also. So whenever open MPI is loaded, we also add the GCC because they are compiled with the same compiler. And so yeah, I mean, while you can load GCC and then open MPI, but by just loading open MPI, GCC will also be. And now if you run MPI run, then it will say that it will try to do something like could not find anything to do, but command was found, and the reason being because we loaded the module. So same thing for your applications, you may need to load, say, GSL or CFITS.io and all those modules which are there.
And if it turns out that, let's say that not at the moment it's not required, but let's say that over time this image gets expanded, and there are multiple versions of GCC and you want a specific version. So in that case, you can also do module unload a specific version and module load the other version that you want to load.
Exactly. So for example, you can see here that IMPI has 3 versions. So Intel MPI, there are 3 versions. So IMPI 2018, 2019, and then 2019, this July or something is there. So you can use any of them. So similarly, you can have GCC hyphen say 9.2 and then GCC hyphen 7.2 and all those things. So you can unload any module and load any module. But then again, we need open MPI matching with that module. So both things has to be matched. Then that's why we generally make sure that if you are running MPI job, once you load the open MPI, the associated GCC will also get loaded. Okay, and eventually, suppose this is like the image that we have built right now. Now, suppose in future you want to add, say, new GCC or no new GSL or altogether a new module, then and if it is really required to be part of this image that I talked about, then you have to report us. Then we will our team will build it, and then we will create it as a module, and then new image will be created out of that, and that new image will be deployed across the cloud HPC, so that you will see the new so that all the users will start getting new applications and the versions of the applications. So libraries and binaries can be accessed using environment modules. So this is nothing but the environment modules that we talked about. Uh, then there is one more option actually. Instead of changing a image, many times it makes a lot of thing. What we can do is MNT exports data. There we can create one more directory called install. Okay, so yeah, right now I don't have permission to, I don't know why. Yeah, so here I can create a directory, we can create a directory install which will include all the binaries and libraries. And the why, because you know that the slash directory space is only limited to 30 GB, and out of that already 16 GB is used. So it is always recommended, like all the uh, new things which we will install, we will install in the this we can install in the install directory. Then we don't need to even create an image, because this will be part of this directory MNT exports data, which will be anyway available for every cluster or virtual machine. So that can be done. So we take it based on the need. Right now the size was not limited, so everything was part of opt, and we can build it around with that. Okay. So if we put everything in install, then basically we will create new module files, and then we will need this command to be added. Right now it's not required. So for example, if you see module avail is currently only showing are only showing these modules which are part of opt directory. Okay, so when we add a new directory, say for example, new directory together, then we need to do some configuration. But we'll right now this is not applicable to you, so you just ignore. So I have already showed you the module avail command and the way to use it. Any questions on the environment modules? Because we'll use this when we are going to submit the job later on. If you are already using it, I am sure that there will be less questions, but only thing just to remember that everything is currently in the /opt directory. Okay, so Slum job. So Slum has a similar command line thing as the one we have for PBS. So uh, we have created one typical job submission script here in the uh, in the in this directory. MNT exports data HPC admin job subscription script. Now we will give the access to all of the users, so that they can just copy the script into their directory, and then they can start using the script to submit the job. Now this is a typical MPI Slum job submission script. Again, very similar to the PBS. So S batch, if the line starts with #S batch, it is some command to the Slum. So for example, this is like job name. Can you able to see this blue text? I don't know.
It's a bit
Are you
hard to see on black.
Yes, it is not that much clear actually.
okay? I don't know.
There is a colors option in Windows here.
All right. Blue and white, what should be the color?
Tanmay, the second option in this window is
Hmm?
the second option on in this window is indicate bolded text by changing and the color selected. So maybe that's why some is blue and something is white. Maybe if you can do it the font, it would just maybe change the font of the apply.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it didn't change. Okay, what I'll do, I will copy this in the text. And is it visible?
Yes.
Yes, better. Yes.
Okay, so this is a typical bash script. I mean, sorry, Splunk script where you can find the hash s batch is the starting keyword, and then you can give the a special parameter to the job, like job slum, like job name. The number of tasks is nothing but the number of CPUs that you want to use. So then the partition that I discussed, whether you want to use HPC or HTC partition, and then after that your actual script runs. So of course, as I said, if you want to use the OpenMPI, then you can run, say, MPI module load commands associated, and then you can run the MPI run program. Like in this case, this is the MPI run program was there. Or it need not be MPI run, it can be a simple program, any program that you want to run. And then as we discussed earlier, you can do other things here also, copy your data. I mean, you can do post job uh, commands or something where you can do anything. Okay, so as long as this script has all the data, the job, as long as you don't reach to the end of this script, your job does not finish and your machine does not get stopped or killed. So that's what we were discussing. So you can keep on adding as much data as possible here so that you can use it. So it will be used as a job, as a part of the job. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, in Slum, there are few important things to note. Let me see what I have listed here. I have covered the S batch, yeah, and then yeah. So to run your problem, you just need to give this command S batch and script name. So for example, here I will give S batch and then script name like MPI job hpc.sh. Then it will start running the job. Okay, so this is the one way to submit your job. The other, I mean, this is the only recommended way to submit job, while there are other methods like srun is the another method where you can run a quick command line job, which we use for our testing purposes. For example, we want to test whether the auto scaling is happening or not. We generally use the srun commands, and that helps us to identify if there is any problem or not. But for you, it is always recommended to, unless it's a very small problem or you are doing some checking, you should use this script. And then if you are using script, there is a command s batch and then the script name. Okay, so Yeah, so this is the way it works. And then there is another called srun command is also there. Now, once you see there are uh, now the problem here is that it's a cloud HPC. Now, as I told you that the job, once you submit the job, after that the machines are going to get created. So you imagine the case where you have submitted your job, and then actually the servers are getting created. Then the job will get assigned to one or more servers, and then your job is going to run. Once job is complete, your data will get at the MNT exports data directory, and then the machines are going to stop. This is the way it is going to work. Is that clear for everybody? Before submission of your job, the machines may not be running. They are already, I mean, you assume that there are no machines. It's just skeleton is there of that architecture, but there are no machines. But once you submit the job, machines automatically gets created. Your job runs on those machines, your job finishes, and then machines gets destroyed. Is that clear with everybody? Because that's very important. Many, and this is a elastic architecture, so you might need to wait for some time. So your job will be in few different states which you may not have seen earlier. So for example, what states that you know in the HPC? One is the job is either a pending or in the queue, or job is running, and then job is failed or job is successful. There are 3 to 4 states are there, or maybe you killed the job. Okay, but here there is one more state associated with every job, which is configuring. Configuring means when you submit the job you have submitted, but there is no machine available. So we need to do some configuration in the cloud, or this auto scaling needs to do some configuration in the cloud. So until that time, the job has to be kept somewhere. Now the job can be saved as it is in the queued state or the pending state. Then the people users will not understand what is happening in behind there. So for such reasons, when the machines are getting created, the job is shown as configuring state. Is that clear? The configuring state. So you always have to wait. Once you submit your job, you have to wait for say 5 to 10 minutes maximum, that my machines will get created and my job will get submitted on that job. So now there is a question like as soon as you submit job, you have to wait for 5 to 10 minutes and before you conclude that there is some problem on the cloud system. But suppose after say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, your job still stuck in the configuring state, then there can be a problem on the cloud system, and in that case you can call or send an email or call us. Then we can we'll check, and whether it's really a problem we can fix it. But otherwise, just wait for 5 to 10 minutes before your job goes from the configuring state to running state, or configuring state to running state. So there are some commands that you should know, which is the first command is scontrol, show jobs. Is the command which will show you all the jobs which are currently running or configuring or pending in the state. So scontrol show jobs will show you the system jobs. So currently you can see that no jobs are there in the system. The other
Excuse me,
simple
Tanmay?
yeah,
I have a question.
Mhm.
So this is about the srun command that you were telling about a few minutes ago. So as you mentioned that whenever we submit a job, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to switch on the machine. So let's say that I'm not 100% sure that my code doesn't have any syntax error, and I want to do a test run. If the code is compiled successfully and it starts running, then I can maybe give the complete job. So can I use srun, or it would also take 5 to 10 minutes to?
Yeah, even this will take a 5 to 10 minutes. So yeah, so SRun is nothing but a simpler option of S batch. But the next process is same thing actually. So
So
it
that
will
means
take 5 to 10.
if we want to do a test run, we have to wait at least 5 to 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, but see what, yeah, exactly. So, but what will happen? Suppose you run the test run, okay, and uh, by the way, if your job is going to run on your system, then it hopefully will run on this system also uh, because the compilations and all these things you have fixed on your side. So, but suppose there is a case where there is some problem because many times your job is going to fail also. So, in that case, you have to wait for 5 minutes. Uh, uh, and then you can run your problem, or you can run it on your local system, or there can be a virtual machine given to the users, which is a small virtual machine which can be used between the users also, and there it can be kept as a test machine or something where you can run and test it. So we don't want master to be loaded because of for the testing purpose, but there can be a smaller machine which can be used for the testing instead of testing. So once you submit that job, after 5 minutes, the machine will start. It will say, okay, job is not working or job failed or whatever. After that, it will not shut down suddenly. So it's like it's a lazy sleep kind of thing where it will wait because you might fix your problem in say 10 to 15 minutes, right? And within that 10-15 minutes, if you submit again, it will not again take that start command. The machine might be already running at that moment, so your job will suddenly go in. So it's not like you because you for every job you have to wait for 5 minutes. It's not like that. If you can fix your problem within say 10 minutes or something, then your next job will again go in instantaneously. It will not need to be waited. So start is see it's like the auto scale system also make sure that it's not like so abrupt that user does not get a chance to work on anything. So while at least stopping it, it takes some time before it stops.
So that time is exactly set to 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's 10 minutes. It's a slum configuration, I think. I will check whether it can be configurable. We can change that if possible. But yeah, it is 10 minutes is the precisely that I remember it is the time.
Okay.
This S control command, does it list only the user's jobs or all the jobs in the partition or
Yeah,
on the account?
so I think there is it will show the jobs which is associated to user only, and to see all the jobs there is a extra permission is required, I think. Yes, so I can confirm that. But right now it will show. I mean, from the other experience of other schedulers, it will show you um, only the your own jobs only.
Okay.
Administrator can see all the jobs, but the users will see only the jobs associated with them. Now there is another command which is quick command, which is SQ. So SQ command is similar to the S control show job, but S control show job will anyway. What I will do, I will submit one small job so that you get to know few more things. So let me, while I don't recommend that way, but let me submit a job with srun sleep slearn, and then I will give the partition P as a HPC partition, and then for sleep I will go for say I can also give the number of processors, but it's okay. So suppose maybe 200. for 4 minutes it will sleep. Okay, so I just submitted one job S run on partition HPC, and the job is sleep for 240 seconds, so 4 minutes. No, so now suppose I run the SQ, you can see that a job ID 4 is shown here, which is going to run, which is running on HPC partition. The name is sleep because I have not, the sleep command itself, it has taken name. The user is HPC admin, which is through my name it is done. And the state you can see carefully, it is CF, which is configuring state, and the time it took for doing that, and the number of nodes that it is using, and which node it is taking up, that is also it is shown. So now this is a node name or the virtual machine name that has been created. So while in the backend there is a way to find it out, but from this console also you can do lot of analysis, like what is happening with my job. So one option is the SQ, where you can see what is the state of my job. So I just submitted. So as I said that it will take some time from the configuring to running state. So same thing, this is a SQ, which is a quick command. You will see what is happening with my job. And with S control show jobs, you will see more details about the same job. So the job ID is 4, job name is sleep, then what is my username, then priority, many things like output. Suppose you may have mentioned the output location and all, working directory and all. So yeah, so all these things will be there. Which node it will be allocated. So this will be important. HPC PG01. So this is the node name that will be allocated and all. So this is the way you can see. But what is the most important thing is the job state. It is showing configuring, right? So it is basically booting the system, or the system is getting created in the backend. Now suppose you want to know how my job, see, it's still a very black box, right, for you. Like, I mean, I just submitted the job. It is showing me that job is getting configuring, but I don't know whether my node is really getting created or not. So there is one more command, which is S control show nodes. Similar, instead of jobs, you have to give nodes, and then you can also give the node name if you want. So for example, this name. So for example, if I give the show nodes, it will show all the nodes available configured on this. So if I go here, so I ran the S control show nodes, and it will, where is that? Yeah, so here S control show nodes, it is going to show me all the nodes. Okay, and now, so this is the node HPC, this is the first node, and all the information is given here. But currently, if you can see that on for that node, you can also get the IP address. So for example, we discussed, right? I want to go to that server and collect information from that. Suppose I want to go manually to that machine and do something, then you can get the IP address of that machine here. So using S control show nodes, you can get the IP address of that machine. Also, you can see the state is currently mixed plus cloud. That means it is still not on. It's not completely on. It is still in the configuration state. Okay, but it is getting on. Whereas if you see, there are many nodes, right, or many virtual machines. So whenever you see that another machine, which is HPC2 number machine, you can see the state as idle plus cloud plus power. This power means actually powered off, means it is not on. So whenever you see this configuration, then you can assume that the machine is not on. And when machine is not on, the node address will also not have any IP address, because these all things get created runtime. Whereas in the first machine, which is going to get started, you can get the IP address here. So you got this, like the first machine, because I submitted the job, this machine started running, and then this is the IP address it got, and then this is the state right now it is in. Now it will come and start. But all other machines, so there are, I mean, this is like 1000 core HPC cluster. So all other machines, you will see that idle plus cloud plus power, because machines are powered off. In fact, once your job is complete, it is always better to check whether the machine again goes back into this state or not. Okay, I mean, there can be a possibility that multiple users are submitting job, then your job is finished, but some other job is there, and then because of that, uh, the machine is still on. But because it's a small, because you can discuss amongst yourself, you can check whether if nobody is running the job, then if this idle plus cloud plus power is actually the state, which means that machine got deallocated or they are killed. Okay, so now let's and then you can see individually also. So for example, I want to see, so here, as I said, uh, I want to see only a specific node. For example, I want to see this node. Now, by the way, I run the SQ command and you can see the state is running. Right now, this sleep state is running. So machine started and the job went into the running state. Now I can go and then
Sanjay,
S. Huh.
does this SQ also tells, or how can we know about the number of cores that are currently running?
Yeah, it shows actually. Right now it is only one, so it did not give -1, but otherwise it will give you the :1 here. In this node list, you will get how many cores it is using actually here. After this node list, it will give colon and then number
Okay.
of cores actually.
So
And then
it is
if there
not
is a
giving right now.
list, huh?
And why is it not showing it right now?
Right now, I just gave, I think, one core. That's why it is showing. But
Okay.
there is one more option in S control show jobs. If you see here, there is definitely you can see there will be somewhere number of nodes 1, number of CPUs 1. Can you see this?
Yes, yes, okay.
Yeah, so this is that's why SQ is the quick one. I think it gives :1, but I don't remember. But this is the S control show jobs is a better way, and you can get all the details. And which node it is running also you can see from the node list. And again you can do a S control show nodes, and you can only get information about this particular node. So now you can see that hash gone, and then mixed plus cloud is the configuration that it stays until it is running. And now suppose I want to go on to that node. So then you can just take this IP address 10.0.28 and then just do SSH. So in fact, if you see, the first host name was 05. Now I went to 08. So I went into that directory basically. Okay. I mean that machine. So if you run host name, it has the different host name as compared to this one. So yeah, so you can go inside this and then you can again run df-h command. So for example, so now if you see here, this MNT resource, that temporary storage which we were discussing, it has about 473 GB size on this machine. Okay, so this is a temporary storage that we were discussing. Whereas this is MNT export data, it is same as the original one. So if I go inside MNT exports data in that machine, you can also see HPC admin install that I just created and Saurabh directory. So all these directories are available in that machine also. And if you go to MNT resource, there will not be anything other than this data loss warning and then this few default files. But yeah, you can create your temporary data in this directory, which is of 473 GB size currently. Okay. So again, let me go back to SQ. So now job is complete, job is finished, right? S control, show jobs. So job is completed, right? So after 10 minutes, the machine actually will stop, and then you will not actually be going there, and I mean your connection will drop. So for example, you again try to do SSH onto the same 10, what was that, 10.0.28. It will not work after some time because the machine will get destroyed. Okay. Anything else? Anything that you have in your mind, so that so yeah, so I talked about the computation machine start automatically. It might take 5 to 10 minutes. The job state will be configuring state, then it will be running state or pending state based on the basically. If see, for example, we have say 1,000 core cluster and all of you consume that 1,000 cores. I mean, that is the maximum size that is reserved in the cloud. And if still you submit some job, then in that case the job will go in the pending state because or the queue state, because then the elasticity is, I mean, we stretch to the limit actually.
I have a couple of questions at this point. So I just want to point out that the nodes that we have are of 120 cores per machine. And even if a single core job is submitted, the whole machine is powered up, and the charge for the whole machine is applicable. And so it's better to always plan the simulations in a way that if you are waking up a machine, you use all the cores available on that machine. And the related question about that is, let's say that I am just submitting 100 single core jobs. So the first one that I submitted, that wakes up the machine. It had 120 cores available, and then 100 cores can be accommodated into that one virtual machine. So is it guaranteed that the other submissions will not wake up any other machine, and it will all be maximally packed in the machine that is awake?
Yes. Yeah, so that's the way algorithm has been built, and it should work like that. And if it is not, then it is a bug. We should, I mean, you should report it as soon as possible. Yeah, because then it does not make sense. So it should be packed within the one node. So as we have configured, considering all the aspects, so while there are 5 machines actually in the HTC partition, and each machine has 8 cores. Okay, and HPC partition has 9 machines, and each one has 120 cores. So total 40 cores are there in the HTC partition, and this is our current configuration. We can change it anytime. So HPC configuration is totally 1,000 cores are available, 1,080 cores. So now, while I talked about lot about the embarrassingly parallel and the tightly coupled or HPC versus HTC, don't take decision only based on whether my job is parallel or not. You can see now you can see this yellow, it's a deleting VM. So VM started deleting. So after 10 minutes, I guess job got deleted. Yeah, so machine started deleting because our job got completed. So what I was saying is that while HPC and HTC partitions are built, just by default don't go by that name. You also understand that HPC partition has 120 cores per node and HTC partition has 8 cores per node. And what we thought is that for smaller problems where you just don't need lot of capacity like 60 cores, 80 cores, you go for the this HTC partition. If you actually have a problem which is less than 8 cores, very simple problem, say small analysis you want to do or some small computation you want to do, go to the HTC partition. In your case, this is the configuration. So instead of going by the name, whereas HPC partition, if you want to go with say per node, you are okay to utilize 120 cores, then you go for this particular partition. So just don't think like embarrassingly parallel versus tightly coupled. See like how I can optimally use my cost, because the 8 core obviously, see in the cloud, core is related to price. So number of cores and number of hours that you are going to use the cores. So cores into hours is the pricing that you will be charged. So you can relate this analogy to your electricity bill. It is kilowatt. When we say units, electricity units, it's a kilowatt hour. So how many kilowatt and how many hours you use. So similarly, how many cores and how many hours you use. So think like keep in your mind that HPC every node is 120 cores. So even if you so for example, I just gave a job on one core, but it started a machine which had a 120 cores. Why? Because I gave HPC partition. And same thing, if uh, uh, I just needed 8 cores, then I should have started this HTC machine. The other thing is, while selecting the partition, you also remember that suppose your problem is say 40 core problem, so your problem is more than 8 cores, and you feel like okay, I will use 2 HTC nodes and it will work, but make sure that then MPI is supported and all those things are working, which if it is not, then you have to use a HPC system. Again, the other thing you should consider while selecting the partition, whether my problem scales up beyond the number of nodes. So for example, while my application supports MPI, I can use say 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 machines together to run my problem. But does it really going to help me 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times better performance? Because typically the application may not scale as the number of nodes get added together. So if there are many problems which are very good, which good work very well in a single node, instead of using multiple machines to run a single problem, right? So in that case, you run that particular problem on the single node, and that way you can run the problem. So all these things you have to remember. Whereas here you just also keep a note that HTC machine is 8 core and one HPC machine is 120 core as of now. Okay, so now there is a
Is there
yeah.
any quick way to also view the cost? Because that way they can do a better calculation.
So what we can do actually, if users are submit, no, what they can do is that they can just make sure that core into number of hours. That is the cost associated. Core hours is the unit. So what they can run, what users can do is that how many core hours I am using the system. That will definitely help us. And I think by every there will be accounting can be added, accounting will be added here, so every job can be accounted. Okay, accounted means just to make sure that everybody understand that how much core hours are utilized in a particular month. So that can be added as accounted, so that you will feel like, okay, this is the number of core hours are used. So it's not cost, but definitely the core hours can be given to the by the end of the month. Like, okay, this many core hours are utilized. One more thing, which is last but uh, uh, last but very important, that we discussed, Dr. Saurabh, which is the user interface, right? The UI that is required to run some of the graphical applications. And for that, what we have done is that, so Dr. Saurabh, every user needs to have that machine, or can they share that machine? So we created one machine to right now. So I'm going to connect to that machine. Okay. And I will show you how that can be accessed. By the way, this is the back end. So while everybody is using Linux, there is a utility called Remote Desktop that you can install on your machines. It is I mean, we have tested the VNC performance and the Remote Desktop performance, and we found that this performance is better. So we will provide you. Okay, let me give the background instead of going straight away to here. So once your HPC cluster is, I mean, you understood the HPC part of that. We have say 10 minutes now. So, but what happens, suppose you did your output, you got the output, and now you are not sure whether I can download such a huge amount of data to your to my premises or my laptop or my machine in my home or my institute. So what you can do the post calculation or post processing in the cloud itself. And you may need a graphical user interface to do that. So you need a graphical window the way I am presenting right now. So graphical interface you may need actually. So for that, what we did is we created another machine. So this is we call it as say workstation. So workstation 1, workstation 2. There can be few workstations. So users can directly connect to that workstation. And how to connect? We will send you this DNS name. So DNS name is nothing but like IP address. But because IP address keeps changing, we prefer to give you the DNS name. And then you can use this DNS name in your remote desktop client, which can be installed any of the Linux machine or even Mac, because it's a standard protocol for connecting any of the remote machine. And once you connect, it will connect basically. Now this is a workstation which is deployed in the cloud, okay, but with the graphic interface. Now you will be asked your username and password.
So in this case, it will be username password based because the HPC was based on SSH keys.
Yes, actually yes. Yeah, because this has to be username password. So it's a separate machine, so we can configure the passwords here. Connecting to human. Okay, sending login. Okay, login failed. Okay, I'll just check the password. Just a second. Okay, so can you see the screen? So with username and password, I got connected. I think this screen. So this is nothing but your Linux desktop that you get. And now you can expect a slight delay in the experience because the machines are deployed in USA and we have connected the whole desktop from the USA to here. Right, so you can expect a slight delay and you can do any graphical activity here. Now one of the important fact is that the same MNT exports data will also be available here. So where I can see oh sorry yeah, so MNT can you see this runtime?
Yeah.
Yeah, MNT exports and data. And now you can see HPC admin install Saurav, same directories are there. So you can directly work on these directories from the GUI. And one of the application that Dr. Saurav was saying like Jupyter Lab, right? So for example, this is the one application. Now I want to open. So you can for example, suppose your output data is here, MNT exports data. So which you generated from by running your simulation on the HPC cluster. Once your simulation is complete, you connect to this workstation through this TIFR Astro WS1 this URL, and once you connect, you can go to the same location CD MNT exports data. Suppose I go in the HPC admin and there is some data available here and I want to analyze that data, generate some graphs and all. So that can be done here. So what I can do, I can just open this I mean, for example, this is one application that Dr. Saurav said, like Jupyter Lab. So I will open the Jupyter Lab, for example, and then it will open here. So you can see that CMC demo, CMT stage, job submission script. So those were there, like on that HPC cluster, which I can access from here, right? So yeah, so basically you can do anything here. So my resolution is smaller, so that maybe like it may not be, yeah. So but this is the way you can get your graphic user interface. You can generate your report. Suppose you are using latex and all, and you want to open the PDFs and all, so that can be built here only, instead of downloading huge amount of data onto the local machine. But
Sorry,
So
I
just
think
to point out, the reason why downloading should be minimal is because there are charges associated to any downloads that we do.
exactly. So that is the reason we should minimize the download and do the all the analysis and data management there itself. And because the charges are also associated with this machine. Okay, this TIFR South Central US, this machine which will be running. Now there are this thoughts like if user get this machine to access, they should make sure that they stop this machine whenever there is done. So what will happen that so Dr. Saurav, what is the plan? So if we can keep the small machine and running it 24 by 7, or should we give this ability for the users to keep it running? I mean, start and stop the machine.
I mean, they should start and stop.
Okay, so in that case, what will happen? Every user will have we'll have to go to the portal.azure.com. So because this is a special condition, because you want to access the uh, virtual machine for the graphics interface. If you don't have any need to use the graphic interface, then this is the HPC part is done. This is more of the graphic part. So what we'll do, you will log into portal.azure.com with the account that we will provide. It's a separate account will be required. It's a Microsoft Azure account, cloud account will be required, and you will only see the machine. You should go to the virtual machines. So once you go to the home, either you will see virtual machine option here, or you will see virtual machine on this window, left hand side virtual machine option here, and you will see only virtual machine which is allocated to you and not other virtual machines. So once you go to there, for example, right now I went to this machine, workstation 1, and I connected to that machine through this utility called remote desktop connection. And sorry, so this is the machine. So you should click this DNS name and connect, or the public IP address, and connect to that machine. Once you are done that, you are done with your computation, what you should do, you should stop the machine. Okay, before you want to start run the problem, whatever the auto scale functionality that I described earlier, when you submit the job, automatically machine starts. Once your job is complete, automatically machines things stop. But this is the machine which is created for your manual work or the graphic user interface. So nobody can know when you are starting and when you are stopping. It's not a job scheduling, right? So for that, once before you are starting the work on this graphic user interface machine or the desktop environment, you should start using by clicking start option. And once you are done, you should please make sure that you stop the click the stop button. There is one more option that by the end of the day, say at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., the machine can automatically be stopped. So that configuration can be done, and you will get an email before stopping the machine. Okay, so in that case, automatically machines will stop, but then you will get the stop option. Sorry, you will get an email before 15 minutes before the machine getting stopped. You can extend that stop, or you can cancel that automatic stopping of the machine. But starting is manual, stopping can be automated by the end of the day or something. But if you are done with 2 hours, it is recommended that you click stop after 2 hours. So for example, now I just open this, I will close this, I may save everything. Now once I save everything will be part of this MNT exports data, for example, and I will close this window. But closing this window does not mean the machine is stopping. It is just I am closing the window, okay, from the front end. You have to click the stop button. So I am clicking the stop button. Once you click the stop button, the machine will actually stop. So currently it is showing status as running. It will go in the stopping state. Yeah, so right now it is deallocating, and finally it should be stopped. So don't run the shutdown command or something inside the machine. It is not going to help in saving the bill. To save the bill, you have to click the stop from this window. So I will send you this detail.
So every user will get his or her different workstation.
Yeah, that can be done actually. We'll update you, or we can keep the sharing also. So we will update you with that.
Tanmay, we can discuss about whether there should be a shared workstation, or every user has a different workstation that can be tracked. So let's discuss that over email.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so I think that's all we are about. I mean, beyond the scheduled time, but I think I could cover most of the aspect. I would have liked to run your problem, but maybe you try and anytime you can connect with me, or there is another email address, and then we have phone numbers also with our support thing. But whenever you send an email, we will reply within that day itself.
Yeah. So Tanmay, this was very useful. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
And the whole recording of this session will be available on YouTube that you will send me,
Yes.
send everyone, right?
Yeah.
So we can refer to this every now and then. And if you can also make the slides available, or if you have created a wiki or something
Yeah.
like that, that
Yeah.
would be very useful. And then if any of us have any questions, or if you think of something that you kind of forgot to mention or anything, let's create a thread and let's CC everyone who are involved, so all 6 of us, and let's ask questions over email. And in that, perhaps, I mean, Tanmay, you can do it, or maybe I can do it later on. So just send the RSA keygen, SSH keygen command, the level of, you know, level of complexity. I think the one that I generated was the highest beat complexity RSA. There are different ways to do it. So maybe you can just give a good example of how they can create it, and they can all share it with you, the public key. And when their accounts are created on the HPC side, they can maybe all try to SSH to the HPC machine and run a very short code that they're all running now. So they're all running something or other on TIFR local machines. So I would encourage all of them to do just a test run. So just go in for, I think all of them, it will be more appropriate to run on HTC machine, the code that they are running, HTC partition. So none of them are needing 120 core machines at the moment. And also this is, limit to the runtime to, few seconds or something. I don't know. And just to, revise what Tanmay just taught us today. So I think that will be a very useful experience for them.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yes. So eventually, yes, after the stopping the machine, you should see stopped and deallocated as the final for this GUI machine. Yeah. So this is the final state you should see. So then billing stops actually on this one.
Yeah. This is good.
Okay. Okay, thanks everybody. I think I have another meeting to join. So thanks everybody. Thanks for your time, and please send a email. I'm anyway creating an email thread. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Tanmay. That
Thanks.
was very useful. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Hello.